the second block of the presentations will concern three examples. Two of the speakers we have physically here. The third of the speaker unfortunately had to stay home due to the COVID. We're still inside of the pandemic, so her presentation will be displayed online, so we'll have a video of her explaining the tool GeoCitizen of Atri. And right now we will hear András Farkas. I don't know. Telling us more about strategy of Cluj-Napoca, Cluj to 2030, and the process of developing it.
Because I want you to see it also.
I can go there.
Yeah. So Alexandra, I will be the most important actor here because I will speak blindly. I will not know what is in the background, but I will give you hints about what I'm seeing on the phone, so you will see the same slide on the background somehow. Let's see how it works, okay? So it's all about the experience. Hi to all, my name is András Farkas, and together with Ág and Balázs we came from the city of Cluj, Romania. Imagine this city like being the second city in the country, or it is debating this level of second city in the country with other second cities in the country, always against the capital city, which is Bucharest. So imagine that Kraków is like say the same. You have second level cities. I check your population. It's a little bit the same. So it always tries to be the black sheep, doing things differently. However, there are also positives on this side. So what I want to tell you very shortly is how we try to put in context all what we want to do in Cluj related to youth. When we are saying we, it's important to underline that PONT Group is an outside organization, so it is technically an NGO. We are a kind of systems organization or resource type of organization who is trying to support various actors in doing their work in a better way. So basically at this moment there is agreement between the municipality, the Metropolitan Association, the Youth Federation and ourselves, which is a background work in putting together this framework which I will present it to you. And it is still called a strategic concept because it is not yet approved. The approval will happen probably in the next 2 months. There's a big debate about how to approve a strategic framework, like who is approving first. Is the municipality approving first? It is the Youth Federation approving first? How will other metropolitan municipalities approve it? Because there is a difference in how youth policy was approached in Cluj until now and how it wants to be approached from now on, which is the metropolitan approach. The main argument being that for a young person, the urban environment doesn't stop at the city boundary. So we need to somehow solve this administrative problem, which for a young person is the kind of I don't care what you have in the administrative background. I am a young person, so I need services, I need spaces, I need whatever. So, the purpose, very important what the purpose is. And in this context for Cluj for Youth 2030, integrated 10-year metropolitan approach. Very important, the 10-year, which is rather new in Cluj, the metropolitan, so it needs to get out of the boundary of the city. The city has some 400,000 inhabitants, the metro area around 600,000. So there is a 50% added value here. And a very specific perspective on the youth generation. Bruno was mentioning that there is a lot of debate about why we need something specific to youth. Why isn't it okay to handle it with other topics? What we also try to explain is that youth needs specific measures. And what we also try to explain to decision makers is that when we are speaking about youth, actually we are speaking about the future of the city in 20, 30 years. And we are trying to loop this information back every time. Because of course today a young person and the group of young people has a lot of needs and a lot of things which this young person and this group of young persons are doing in the city. But in 20 years time, these same people, if they will not leave, will be actually the ones who will make the city work. Because I will have if I'm lucky, I will have a pension, the same young people will pay for it, but then there is this exchange of generations. So this is very specific city young people relation which we need to tackle here. So we had 10 arguments at the beginning, very basic ones. Yes, there is a general metropolitan strategy already approved. We need to connect and to have a specific youth element into it. This is not okay to be just a chapter in the youth strategy, it needs to be something separate, which however is integrating very well with the general development strategy. You know the European Year of Youth. Number 2, youth and the city. We want to reconsider how the relation between youth and the city is perceived and how it's working in practice. There was a lot of research done. In Cluj, there wasn't no such complementary and comprehensive research done on youth specifically ever. So there were 3 specific researches. One was about the subjective perception of young people about the city, so how they perceive it. The second was very much about how various systems are working. And the third one was about describing what the profile of a young person in the city is, like starting from how many, what age, what perspectives. We are a magnet city, as probably Kraków also is, who is attracting a lot of young people who are actually not from Cluj. Their very problems are different because when they are coming to Cluj, their social networks are non-existing. They don't have the family doctor, they don't have anybody, they don't know who to call if they have a problem. Then they start to socialize and then things are built up. So there is this specific dimension. Okay? Metropolitan area, number 5. Number 6, this is a slogan used by the mayor, but which actually I like a lot. He always says, we need to go beyond this ego thing. It's not like my organization, your organization, your organization. We need to do something more because there are much more to be prospected here. And if it's coming from a decision maker, it's okay because it's also validating what you are trying to say and do. Yep, Cluj, a young city, so yes, age-wise, it is a young city. So we are not an aging city, it's actually, the demographics is growing. But also, we also want to put a lot of emphasis on social innovation. Like how we can innovate not just in economics or technology, but in social field. There is the post-COVID problem, which is we can debate if it's a post-COVID or existing COVID problem. Mental health was mentioned here. It's a massive, massive, massive problem. We don't even realize how massive it is and how much effects it will have in 10 to 20 years. Socializing, this living with your parents problem, which is again massive because of the housing affordability and so on and so forth. Now there is this first trial in Cluj to think the city's future in a 30-year lifespan. So what will happen with the city in 30 years? How it will look like, how it will be positioned, what will be the life in Cluj. And this is an ongoing debate which I think it's okay. So we go to the objectives. Imagine this as a matrix, okay? It's a very simple thing. It tends to be complicated, but we want to make it very simple. It's about the relationship between youth, the city, and the third element is the ecosystem. So basically the strategy about is how the young person and the city are engaging with themselves. And then the ecosystems are all the other people who are supporting this relationship, who are not doing this relationship instead of young people and the city, but who are supporting youth workers, companies, various municipal services, everything you can imagine which is in the background, youth spaces. Which, again, very important, they don't have to, and they never should speak on behalf of young people, but they should support what is happening in this relationship. So on all 3 levels, there are very simple objectives and very simple things which are followed. The first one is youth. There are 3 perspectives there, which I tried to validate, by the way, with the, I did my homework, with the framework. So, in the background you see the well-being or the sustainable life, which is health and well-being. You see the perspectives and you see agency, or yeah, it is called agency. So the first one is how the young person is feeling today. What problems do I have? Physical problems? Do I feel well? Can I consume culture? Do I have opportunities for spending my free time and stuff like this? The second is about my life as a young person in the future. What skills would I have? What kind of education would I have? How will I be equipped for the future of work? If I want to be an entrepreneur, am I equipped for this? So everything which is related to my future career, it is connected to the perspectives. In the framework, that is conditions for learning and development and supporting in achieving economic independence, for example. Health and well-being was separately. And agency is like, imagine the word agency is very interesting in English. Agency is the moment when the young person decides to act. Not just to be a consumer of the city, but to do something in the city. This can be political, social, civic, any kind of things when the young person is doing something, not for himself, but also for the community. This is everything which agency covers here. On the city side, And you see the youth goals. I just want to mention you. It is also correlated with the European youth goals. So on the city side, there are three important elements: access and equal chances. Okay, so every time we need to put ourselves the question: okay, how is the strategy and the efforts within the strategy supporting this equal access? Because you know how things are happening, especially in the growing city. The gaps are growing usually. So we need to somehow to close them down. The second, which is really interesting, that it is never addressed neither with the youth strategy or the youth goals, is the rural aspect. So we put ourselves the question: okay, how can the city actually help the rural surrounding? Which is because it is a magnet city, we need to give back something to the rural, like we need to give access to the rural to the urban, but also there is an other side where maybe the rural can actually give something to the urban. Quality of life, getting out from the city, this kind of stress in the urban life, and so on and so forth. And the third one is obviously the European dimension. So a city, Cluj, the metro area, needs to provide an outlook to young people to Europe, okay? So we cannot isolate ourselves. We constantly need to find ways through which we improve and enhance connections with other places. Mobilities, interactions, collaborations, and so on and so forth. And the fourth one is the ecosystem, like how the ecosystem is supporting all of this. There are four basic elements, and this is very much connected to Bruno's mentioning of the resources. First are the physical resources, where this is happening, open spaces, closed spaces, youth centers, public parks, whatever, and how they are designed. Second is how we do this, like with whom we are doing this, HR departments of companies, for example, they are very key stakeholders, and how we are working all together. This is the methods part. The third one is obviously all the decisions and how they are taken and how they are formulated, preparation of decisions, taking the decisions and following up on the decisions. And the fourth one, not the least, money. Where it's coming from, how it is organized, how it is distributed, who is distributing it, how do you see various perspectives in how you distribute them. Okay, so how does the strategy operate? Very good question. How is it not a document? I really, and I'm a fan of strategies, but I hate them when they are put into a drawer. So if we are not able to explain how this is helping the smallest informal group of young people in doing something, then the strategy doesn't have a good role. So everybody should understand how we can work with this. So we put up four principles, let's say, on how this is working. One, it is a 10-year strategy, but let's be realistic, we cannot imagine our future in 10 years. So we need to have a shorter time span. Action planning on a yearly basis, and you will see a timeline. We try to do a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years to do research, to do a recalibrating, and then to move forward and do the monitoring. Systemic approach, connecting, and imagine we really identified 721 organizations who are doing something for young people in the metro area. It was and we scraped the internet for this. So basically, if somebody does something for young people, most probably there is somewhere a mark on the internet about this. Google is good for this. You need to avoid yourself being considered by Google as a bot. So no, really, this is we had colleagues who for 4 weeks did this mapping through the internet, and then of course we filtered the information, we identified a pool of some 70, 80 keywords on how to group them, and it is available, an available database. Imagine how many things these organizations are doing, and we at Centrum level, we don't know that they are doing it. So it is very interesting how to connect all of them. Third one is monitoring collective effort. So it is not just what the city hall does, what PONT group does, what the youth federation and its member organizations are doing, but actually to try to capture everything which is done connected to youth. And again, labeling it, filtering it. How we can do this? Very good question. One way was to see if we can collect data based on the funding given by the municipality when asking the reporting for budgets. Also to ask some additional information. Okay, by the way, how many young people did you manage to engage? How many projects did you do? Where did you do it? And putting them on a map and so on and so forth. Not yet clear how it will happen exactly. Okay? And the fourth one is innovation lab. So if we have a 10-year strategy approved today, we should be critical enough to put ourselves the question in 2 years' time if we did take the right decision 2 years ago. So every time go back and try to see if there is something new which came up. I will give you the darkest possible example. war in Ukraine, 50,000 refugees coming into the city, maybe half of them young people. What do you do with them? You cannot say, we have a 10-year strategy, sorry. It is, but we need to innovate. So this is why the Innovation Lab will constantly work on improving what is there and to putting the questions if it's something wrong or good. Okay, very shortly on key initiatives. I don't want to spend a lot of time here, just some examples. Some of them are already working, others are in progress, others they are just plans. Urban civil service, by the way, this came from our lovely partner who will join into presentations time, Julia. Italy has this universal civil service connected to volunteering. We want to improve this model and put it in a local perspective. What Kraków was saying was really interesting about this mapping or monitoring what your volunteering work is, this volunteering indicator, index, it was volunteering index, what our guest was telling about. Very interesting. How can you map your progress through volunteering? How can you be recognized doing volunteering in the city? Youth platform connecting all the information and elements, very more technical. Rapid response came up through a lot of discussions in the municipality. This very problem of the young person not being able to find the best information for his or her own problem. Very simple example. I'm 17 years old. I had sex with my partner. The condom broke at 1 a.m. in the morning on Saturday. Who do I call? Who do I ask? There is no solution for this. And it is a very sensitive problem. It needs to be dealt probably in a very fast way. It is not something for which you will call 112. Various reasons. So how can the city put together all the available resources, expertise, people, for that young person to be able to find the best answer in the best possible and fastest possible way? This is just a concept thing, but we want to work on developing the proof of concept and then to develop the technical solution and the background human solution for this, because technology is just a tool for human interaction. Cluj for Youth Host Service on the second page. We're just assisting a lot of youth organizations to be able to host more people coming from different places. Volunteering, interactions, European mobility, everything. In a lot of cases, their problem is that they need to focus on actually having the young person there, but we as the city, the ecosystem, can help them in tour guides, in whatever, spending their free time while they are there, because it's a matter of the city's positive perception. Youth work forward, youth work. A lot of youth work, background trainings, how you eliminate, put together all the work which is done by youth workers. Even young youth workers considered within the HR departments of companies. Participatory budgeting for youth, it's working, it's going on, come on, it's okay. The Youth Urban Rural Hub, I just looked back for the first time, so you're doing perfect. The relation between the urban and the rural and how we can make this happen in practice. A lot of work with the other 19 municipalities from the metropolitan area. The Youth Agora is massive participation. I don't know if you know Dan Maxon, but we have this, sorry for the expression, fetish for big participation, we just call it. How participation is happening on the scale, not just 10 young people, 1,000 young people, but in what decisions should be young people engaged on a massive scale, and how we can make processes which would work in practice. Participatory budgeting can be an example, but I think there is more. What decisions should young people take for the city and within the city? The innovation, Czech Youth is an innovation lab which is working well with the city hall in general. We want to make a youth perspective of it. Future skills about how we prepare young people for future, being able to address and find a workplace in the future of work. Uptown Downtown is just about identifying all the spaces within the city. There is a mapping already of the city hall on what unused spaces are at companies, in the public, at organizations, which could be introduced in a network of shared spaces. Like, okay, I have some space available, you as a youth organizations can come into my company and use that space for 2 hours every month. So it's kind of integrated booking system. Okay, Fix is the Social Innovation Fund, which is actually happening in practice already for this year, which is a rather surprise. It's a combination of public, private, and NGO funding, through which we are actually supporting the work of young people and rewarding the work of young people to identify a problem in the city and come up with a solution for it. Not just technical, not just business solutions, but also a lot of social solutions. The first cohort of 14 teams is now in, and actually they can get up to 35,000 euro of support in 3 stages. It's like a little bit of social kind of incubation. And the final one, there we have 3 more. One is the creation laboratory, identifying new kind of projects and systemic solutions. The second, the Cluj Gamma, is actually a very basic thing on promoting Cluj as a youthful city abroad. It's basically urban marketing. Because we understood that everybody is saying everything about Cluj, but it would be much more efficient if we would have a common agreement, all of us going abroad, saying the same thing about Cluj. Because this way, and this was the experience of the youth capital in 2015, the European Youth Capital, a lot of people learned about Cluj during the youth capital. Before that, they didn't know anything about the city. So marketing is essential because marketing brings new projects, collaborations, more funding, more awareness, and basically it is serving a lot the local ecosystem too. Okay, so capacity building about increasing the capacity of youth organizations to do bigger, more complex projects, even if their presidencies are changing every 2 years. You know the problem. Okay, finally, timeline. It's a little bit like this. So basically we are somehow here. We do want to work in 3-year cycles. So every 3 years we do a research again. So 24, 27, 30. Of course we are following the implementation, and we are doing 2 reviews of the strategy in 24 and 27 in order to be able to address new challenges which came. We had this idea of, and this might be one way through which big participation could happen, is to have every 3 years a thematic focus within youth. The idea was that not every year should we tackle everything, because every year we try to do everything. But we realized that it's not good. So having a focus, on volunteering, I just said an example, in 2023 would mean that all the ecosystem will do something a little bit more specific on the volunteering. This doesn't mean that everybody needs to do the improvement of volunteering, but it would just guideline a little bit everybody's work in this perspective. And by the way, the topic of that thematic year should be decided by young people in a collective manner. So basically it would be like an election, but not of the mayor, but of the thematic of that thematic year. Let's see how it works. Okay, and finally, what is next? We are basically creating a lot of collective adherence to the, next slide, to this, because we believe that the strategy will not have an effect if it's not accepted by the ecosystem, but assumed by the ecosystem, And finally, because it is about something as a vision, it's the first effort when we try to make a vision through youth for the city. Basically, we want to say 3 things. 1, we want to become a gamma city. You know that there is this classification of global cities. I checked Kraków, you're not on the list. Cluj is also not on the list. Wrocław is on the list. Warsaw, usually capitals, are always on the list. It's a classification of how well connected you are globally. We believe that Cluj needs global connections, and youth is a way to also create new global connections because of the future of the city. So this is number 1. Number 2 is a very subjective aspect. When you will ask a young person, how happy do you feel in your city? The aim would be to get an average answer of 8.5 out of 10. Now this average answer, after the pandemic, it's around, in 2020 it was around 6.7, and we are doing again the research. I'm really curious to see what the average number would be. I would estimate around 7.5, a little bit maybe happiness came back, not sure. The mood was very grim in 2020, in springtime. And the third one is, and this, I know this sounds very like we know everything. It's a more like an aim. We really try to create something which might be relevant for other cities everywhere in the world. I completely agree with the statement that each city is different, so each city will find its own way. By the way, the approach that there is no model. There are some tools, but there is no one single model, okay, this is how you should do youth policy. So what we could do as Cluj is just to contribute to this. Because maybe somebody will be inspired by one very small piece in this framework. Somebody else will be inspired by something else. So this is how we are seeing it. And of course, I could never go to young people to present this like this, because it's complicated. And what young people need, in our perception at least, is very much simplicity. So if you are not able to interact, to work with young people in a very simple way, then we are doomed. Because your interest, I'm looking to young people, your interest will be captured instantly by something else which is much more interesting, much more funny, much more whatever than this complicated whatever thing we are doing. So this is the stage where we are. I made also a presentation last summer. It was a little bit bad because this wasn't put together, and it is still a lot of work in progress in how to make it final and how to start to make it implemented every year through very specific actions.